Recording is on.
Johnny, we're recording, just so you know. But we're not locked into releasing. So that's where we're at. So I think just to sort of set expectations for what I was hoping for and where this sort of is in my head, I've been thinking about this project now for a few months. I think I outlined my motivation as best I could in that video and have, generally tried to socialize the idea of this. But to get down to the nitty gritty and figure out lessons and actually how this is going to look is still quite fuzzy in my mind. And so I guess I would ask for help from the greater group as to what makes sense. And I tried to add some more details at the bottom of that Designathon doc, where I tried to actually outline, well, this is what a challenge 1 might look like, and challenge 2 and challenge 3. I'm not saying that I wouldn't say that I'm thrilled with it, but it is sort of my attempt to try to make it a little bit more real and granular, and allow the designers to actually build something that makes sense. So, my biggest challenge right now is coming up with real, concrete examples of actually what the lessons would be teaching, and less sort of the hand wavy, I'd like them to learn this and run into this kind of character and that kind of thing. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so there's a video pinned in the channel. It's a YouTube video that I recorded as to sort of the motivation of why I think this should exist in the world. And
I've just shared it in
Mo has put that up.
chat.
It sort of looks like this. I'm just talking to the camera, and then I used iMovie to splice in a couple screens. Cool. Maybe it'll just really motivate you, and you can solve all of our problems for us. So, with that said, where would we like to go next? Christoph, you seem to have put the most work into actually making the designs come alive. So what would be helpful?
Yeah. So as an organizer, I'm in the weird situation where I've actually really tried not to do any work, but nothing happened. So I tried to do a little bit and then put it out there and then maybe do a little bit more, just kind of keep it going a little bit and hoping people would take over and chime in a little bit, which on the tech side has been great. But on the design side has not been. I also shared it with the writer's room today. Okay. And Ken said this is a pretty awesome task here to kind of write a sci-fi novel here.
Yeah.
So he's excited. Maybe Ken wants to help out a little bit. Not sure.
Cool.
But in trying to pull people in, and I actually not really do very much, but I'm kind of failing at that.
Okay.
A little bit. And as I mentioned, so for me it was the interesting. I cannot contribute to figuring out those coding challenges. That's not my expertise here. Yeah. But I thought I can help shape the package a little bit. Connect people, bring in a few people in, and also maybe throw out a few things in terms of just capture put some ideas out there of what this could feel like, this whole experience. And I was also trying to connect it with the Bitcoin AI art project because that lends itself just perfectly, right?
Sure.
Then we have some cool illustrations. So here in the background, I try to capture some, banner images here, like what the homepage could be like. I try to create some screen that shows maybe when you choose your mission, chapter, lesson, and try to take some titles here from your document and filled it with Bitcoin Ipsum below.
Yep.
And then just try to see what this mission lesson screen could look like. Just playing around a little bit with things, how you could, just trying to see here, how we could intertwine visuals with the story a little bit and then kind of lead into some coding task where it's not just pure okay, this is a struct. Here's how you write variables. Now
Yeah,
write this
exactly.
variable, but it's a little bit more fluent between the story and the actual activity. But obviously, I don't know what the actual content is. So I just kind of made up a few things. Yeah, and then I was just looking at this one here. Like, let's say we have a homepage, and we have like this could be a chapter selection where each one um, and I try to write a little. I'm hoping that Ken and his writer friends can come up with this. So you start out the story with like it's 2140 2140, the block subsidy has run out, and you're like your position is you work for a company and your boss told you need to figure out what the fees are, and then you figure out the fees, and that's your first mission. And then you're like, well, like you've only known the world, this future world is hyper bitcoinized. You never thought about how things were back in the days. You kind of get curious, you hop in your time machine, and then I don't know, you go back to 2009 or something, and then you work your way forward into uh, back into your future, and then you would stop. Was it the SegWit block? And I don't know, whenever a certain person started pretending that they're another person, and maybe some of these other events, and then you would have these different milestones. So I was just loosely just trying to play around with like how this whole thing can turn into a story. And
Can I ask a question
yeah,
about the deliverable? Is it okay that by the end of this, we just have a bunch of mock-ups or possibly a proof of concept that's really hacked together on the back end? Because something that intimidates me so much is the tech to get it working. Like I'm very much not the type of developer who specializes in this kind of stuff, so it's hard for me to just even look at certain projects and gauge like how much effort would it be to fork this and get it up and running and then embed it into something like this.
yeah. So I would say it's a designathon. There's no expectation at all to have any code written at all.
Okay, cool.
And
So
yeah.
and and I think that that's one of the unique things about this designathon, that it can't just try to capture this vision and write a story and some visuals and UI markups, and maybe that will be enough then to actually get to turn this into a project where other people will say, yeah, like this is, I really want to build this now, and then the tech stuff will be magically figured out by
No,
people.
well, Christoph, I actually do believe that in terms of my own community and my own reach, that it'd be a lot easier for me to, with some visuals, to be able to find the people to actually make it come to life. So even what you've done so far is a head start in terms of actually helping it become more real. And I do feel in some ways pretty guilty because now it becomes very apparent that the narrative is becoming the blocker, and the actually like what are we teaching becomes the blocker, and then that could inform the design, which then will inform the build. So it's now feeling like it's back on me.
I just have to compliment you, Jonas, because you're really introspective. I would say there's really nothing to be guilty about, because you've already come up with some sample plot ideas. And as Christoph said, for this designathon, like we just want to keep things as relaxed and as easygoing as possible, because it's the most important thing is just to have fun. So if you guys like maybe set a design challenge to say, hey, we only build out less than one for the designathon, that's perfectly fine. Like if that's just 5 screens where you just go really deep into the storyline and match them with a coding exercise, you're good to go, like it's fine. 5 screens is more than enough.
Yeah, and let me sort of say, well, first of all, I'm talking to 2 organizers, so I don't want to put the work on you, because you already have enough on your plate. But in terms of like recruiting designer eyes, Johnny, just so I'm clear, you're not a designer? Okay. So the problem is for me, if you look into the members of actually who's in the channel, it's all like people who write code, which finding folks that do both is sort of rare. And so maybe it's there's some instruction from your side in terms of how to draw other folks into the actual design part of it. I'm very confident I will be able to find the builders to actually make it come to life. But the design part still is pretty amorphous for me.
Yep, that is the biggest challenge in the design community, to get designers to not just get into Bitcoin, but also open source, and get them to learn about this different way of working. That is not an easy task, you know.
Got it.
But yeah.
I mean, if you
But
look
we
at what
can.
Christoph has done in that short space of time, I mean, I was on a call with him this morning, and while we were doing other Designathon stuff, he was pretty much just generating images for Saving Satoshi in the background. Oh, just go check out my images. So you kind of indirectly just have someone, I think, who happens to be passionate about it, who put some stuff together really quickly. Christoph seems to be
And
enjoying.
I think like more like you said, sorry to interrupt, but I think what you said is exactly right. If we can just write 2 or 3 lessons, and we create 2 or 3 images, and we write just a little bit of the plot line, and we find a way to do kind of a coding demo or so, then hopefully that's enough to just really prove this thing. And then maybe we can push the Ken and his buddies a little bit to write a story, and maybe we can find some more people who generate more images and so on. Just kind of.
So I will reach
hope
out
it
to
would
Ken
grow.
after this and try to work a little bit on that narrative, push that forward. I would say one of the screens that I would be helpful for me to better visualize and to maybe play around with would be the sort of like the leveling screen, as in the map of where the different challenges or sort of the progression.
Mhm.
So there's 2 things that I think, and this can be V1 versus V2, but the 2 things that I think would be really important for that screen are, one, like, what is the progression, and is it a linear progression, or can you wander and do different things at different times, and sort of the presentation of what are you supposed to do next.
Mhm.
And then one of the things that I really like with this game that I think is a huge challenge just generally with learning online is learning with others and having like some community built into it, so that you understand that you're not doing this in isolation. And in the beginning, that sort of works against you, because it can feel very lonely if you're trying to surface other people. But with time, you can sort of like create this idea of different pockets of density where people are going through the same thing at the same time, and you can make those connections, whether that be with like avatar connections, or whether that be with just like opportunities to meet other people. But I really like the idea of trying to surface the idea that you're learning with others.
Mhm.
And that really does feel more like game-like, as in, um, when I used to work before Bitcoin, like I used to work on learning management system, and it's always our founder like always said, like, I've made more friends playing online poker than I've ever done like doing any learning online. And that's sort of like, that's weird that we don't have these opportunities to connect with other people while we're learning. And learning with friends is always better. It creates that social pressure, accountability, and you sort of have the same energy as you're going through it at the same time.
I really like that. I have not looked at the proposal for the code exercises in a while, but I think I remember there was something to do with block mining, which to me seems like really low hanging fruit in terms of an exercise that you can have people do, because you want them to write a loop so they can mine continuously, and you want them to change the knots every single time. And something that you could do to make it collaborative is maybe make a league, and you and your friends are teaming up, and you all are like in a mining pool, and you all need to write your own mining algorithms. And like once a block is mined, like your funds are, I don't know, confirmed or something, and you can escape or something like that.
Yeah. So if you go to the doc that I think Mo put in the chat, that first one, and you go down and scroll down to, what page is this? It's 7, all the way at the bottom. And so So lesson 2. So the way I've sort of did this last night was I was thinking like there's lessons are a group of challenges, and just for sanity's sake, imagine there's like 3 challenges to a lesson, something like that, and that sort of lines up with the mock that Christoph had put forward. And so so lesson 2 is the idea is something like when Bitcoin first appeared, you could mine with your laptop, and then you sort of like teach people that you're just inputting a string, and that creates a SHA-256 hash with 1 leading 0, and then you can sort of like do it with 2 leading 0s, and then it's like write a script that progressively like adds more leading 0s. Yeah, sorry, Stacy. I can point you to this afterwards.
Yeah, no worries. I think it's probably pinned in the channel. But yeah, I really like that idea, and I'm glad you kind of thought through some of the details. So
I'm sorry, I wasn't done yet.
Okay.
So that was challenge 1, is just sort of like mining on your own. And then the current difficulty has 19 leading 0s, and obviously that progresses progressively harder. So challenge 2 is the country of Amistris has recognized Bitcoin as a threat and is trying to take over the network. Your puny CPU doesn't stand a chance, but you have to combine your hashing power with other miners so you can hold the line against the assault. And so now it's like, how do you sort of like define the nonce space that you're supposed to work with and then coordinate with others? And so that's exactly, I guess, like the idea of that you brought up, Stacy, of like, how do you do this with friends? And that'd be like a perfect hook. And then the next one would be there's an enemy in your midst. Someone's taking payouts without doing the work, and now you have to sort of introduce like the share idea, and like how's the best way to go about it. Again, like I haven't really conceptualized exactly like how to present those things or what kind of tests we would run against that to make sure that people are passing it. But the concepts of working with others are sort of there. The pieces are sort of there. Stacy, now I'm done. I'm sorry.
No worries. Thank you. That's awesome. And I think it sounds like this is actually very well thought out. Is having the coding exercises detailed and polished a blocker at the moment, or is that mostly done? Because I can help out with that, but I want to get a feel for
I
how
don't have like
important it
any
is.
code associated with it or tests associated with it or anything
Yep.
like that.
Okay.
But yeah, so that was like lesson 2. Lesson 1 is pretty simple. It's like decoding the hex message of the Genesis block, or the script hash of the script sig of the Genesis block, and like actually decoding it and being able to read, Chancellor Brink on Chancellor on Brink. So like the idea is to actually like do your own. And then challenge 2 was sort of like a joke, was Bitcoin is censorship resistant money. Anyone can send money without broadcasting anyone can send money by broadcasting a transaction to the network that's packaged up in a block, and then decode this particular op message from this transaction, and like the message is tacos are for everybody. So like it's just sort of like whatever silly op return was put in there, but you can now decode it, and this is how, and it's just using bash.
Yeah, so from a design perspective, like something like the mining and the country attacking and whatnot, it would be cool to visualize some of these things. So as the miner's running, there's some stuff ticking up or down, or maybe you kind of see how your percentage is taking over that evil country's percentage of whatever it is kind of reducing, or a red alert is already almost stopping, like some type of visual feedback. Especially if it helps people understand better what's going on. I think that would be cool. And for that, it would be good to have to kind of have the coding aspect figured out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I don't think that's super priority. That would be cool to have. The question is always here, do we create a simple MVP, and that's what we shoot for, and then we kind of have a laundry list of ideas that we may get to, or do we just kind of present like the full future vision with infinite resources? And
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's sort of like I'm more interested in mood board. Like this is the feel of what this would look like. The AI imagery sort of looks anime-ish to me, which gave me then when I was trying to think of the country that we're fighting against, I went with Full Metal Alchemist, which is this you know Japanese series I know nothing about, so maybe it's terrible, but it has like sort of the imagery
yeah.
that you had that the AI art had created. So it is helpful to just have like someone who's more visually oriented just like be providing some of those leads is like this is the feel of what this would look like, because that's not how my mind works.
In just a question, like in terms of approaching it from which like angle, like is it better to approach it from the angle of come up with the coding challenge first, and then once you know the steps that they need to code, you then write a story to match those steps, or is it easier to come up with a story and then match the coding challenge to the story? Like I'm just what's easier? What makes more sense?
I would say the answer is yes and no. It's a thing where I think good design solutions come when you from attack from kind of different angles. You look at it from over here and then there and then there and
Yeah.
then there, and then you go back over here, and then you get closer, but you kind of really have to put out these different things, and then you adjust together, and that's when you end up because you just don't know exactly from a storyline exactly what will work out best, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and vice versa. So we kind of have to throw out things being comfortable that they just might not be perfect, and we'll have to change them and then adjust and go back
Yeah,
and
I
forth a
think it's
little
like
bit.
writing in general is like you try something, you think it's going to go in a certain direction, you think it'll fit in this particular way, and then you end up putting it in a different paragraph, different section. Like um, I've never, yeah, I don't have a ton of experience with this, but like when you're coding something, you're much more concrete. It's like, this is the kind of thing that we're doing. This is the best way to get there. And even then you sort of like trace it out. They're called tracer bullets in some cases. You like, code it out, and then you're like, oh, I'm not happy with that solution. I know I can do better and do something else. Stacy, Johnny, do you have any take on, from a builder's perspective, like what would be helpful? And yeah, any comments?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. And I mean, there are a couple of programming books out there with exercises like Jimmy Song's Programming Bitcoin. So I think we can be fairly confident that something like Python would have everything we wanted. And then just going to the flow, Chris, you mentioned like a vertical, like basically read your story, do the exercise underneath it, continue with your story. So it's like not a, I guess, a horizontal flow, the opposite of what I did. And I think that reminds me of like Jupyter notebooks, which should be, um, I think, pretty attainable. And then the only thing I would say is to a developer who might be interested in building this, the simpler the exercises, the more likely they are to agree to sign on. So I think that like the decoding of the Genesis block message is something that would be really easy. You could learn about hex encoding first, and then you could go maybe like find the block in some kind of visual, and then input your like hex decoding line. Something like mining where you have to loop seems a little bit harder to me, but I can't imagine it being like so hard that somebody would just be like, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah. To add on to your point, there are these different types of interactions, and I try to write them here. So the first one, which is in this vertical storyline, is you read a little bit of text, then it tells you what to do. You write generate keys, it shows some output, then it continues the story, and then it's like you write a little bit of text, you see something, and then you write another piece of code, and you see something, and it's just little bits at a time. What I saw from Crypto Zombies is that you continuously work on one script, like you write like some function or so, and you add some variables, and then you verify it. There's like a verification and a check type of deal. So that is pretty different. Instead of like linear story, you do one thing at a time. Here you work on a script, and then it seems like the more complex version of that is you don't just create that script, you also run it, and then it kind of it executes, and you see some visualization of it. And those seems like three very different types of interactions that may also need different be built differently. So maybe
Yeah.
we can choose one at a time, or we can try to shoot for all of them, and maybe we use different tech, or maybe not. I'm not really sure. I just wanted to, but maybe it helps if we kind of have different challenge types.
Mhm.
This is a really good suggestion from Christoph because it will help in terms of the UI design side of things. So it's, if I understand correctly, if you kind of decide on three type of interaction challenges on a screen or within the storyline, then those would help with designing it much easier, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also maybe figuring out the how to execute them on a technical perspective. Like let's say you
Yeah.
evaluate a REPL and whatnot. You could say, okay, can I do this single, you know,
Mhm.
just write one line of code, evaluate it, and then move on? Can I write more complex code? Can I write more complex code and execute it and have that inform some type of custom visualization or so?
Yeah. One thing I'll say is when I did try Bitcoin, one of the feedback pieces that I got was like the first half of the lessons are very small and easy and bite sized. And then because I ran out of content, I started going into like UTXOs. And a lot of feedback I got was like, this is just too much text at once. Like I liked it how it was before. So I think that one, doing bite sized pieces in vertical layout, and then also reinforcing and repeating those exercises maybe in a later lesson or something might be the best way that for people to learn. And then when you were talking about crypto zombies and you basically you start with a method and then your method grows into maybe two methods and then you compile it and then you execute it. I'm sure other people do, I have no idea how that works from a technical perspective, so that's something that's a little bit.
Yeah, so I really like the idea of varied kinds of challenges. The idea of what tech we use, I think, is pretty secondary, honestly, because whether it's, I think Replit is like something that I was personally excited about for the larger blocks, like sort of the maybe to analogize, like the second half of the Stacy challenge, try Bitcoin challenges. But I really like the idea of something small and bite-sized to just sort of keep momentum going and keep making sure that you're actually like writing code a lot. So I love the idea of like these snippets where if you're putting in something small or you're running it on your own terminal or anything like that, that it's just sort of like a cut and paste kind of thing, and we just compare strings. Um, Replit is not the only solution for that kind of thing. There's a lot of open source code editors, and it's just the evaluation that we're really just looking for. And that's, as long as someone's like pushing a button, it's pretty easy for us to run a comparison. So you'd probably like need to add like a run button to that task two kind of thing, Ristov, or something along those lines. But they need to take an action, yeah.
Christoph, how many different types of like interaction, like play methods did you come up with? Because it seems like you've come up with a few within the designs that you've come up with.
Yeah, I have not thought too deeply about this. I was just clicking around a few different things, and I thought, sometimes, all you want to do is, have them like type in something, and then, you kind of see this hex. And then maybe the next one is like, decode hex. That's all you type in. And then it shows you the result. It's decoded, and this message appears. And then it says, now copy paste the message. And it really doesn't like it, the code that you write there is not tied really to what happens before. You're not going to rerun the previous code. It's kind of done. You continuously move forward. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just one thing that I made up. Who knows if it's useful or not? But then, like I said, I saw the crypto zombies thing where it's like you continuously work on some script and it gets more complex and it verifies it. And if you put like the code, if you put your variable declaration outside of the function, it complains. About it. Then that's just kind of that's just a very different. You learn something pretty different. You learn about coding structures and different types of variables and all these things, which is a little bit trickier, but it also just requires a different technical infrastructure. And then I was just thinking about what Jonas was saying here. You don't just write a script, you also run it. It has some output, it runs over time, while simultaneously if your friends from all over the world also run them and you're competing with other people. And that's kind of the ultra hardcore difficulty level of not just building it, finding the tech for it, but also maybe designing this game so it's actually balanced and you don't, let's say, you and your friends don't always lose against the country of whatever it was called.
Um,
So Christopher's really come up with like two forms of, I would call it gamification. I've written like notes here at the bottom, but Christopher's come up with typing in something to win. So you type, you write a script. He's also come up with reading something. So you would read something and you would decode. And then the last part you mentioned is like repeating action, which is where you copy and paste. So these are three different like plays which he's come up with.
Yeah, and that's where we have to go back and forth between the coding challenges and the UI design. I mean, I can come up with all kinds of different interactions here. Maybe we just we pick two of those lessons and we just kind of figure those out, and we forget about everything else for the moment, and we just kind of figure out one thing at a time and move forward that way.
Just one storyline.
Because otherwise it's just so big, right? We can make this huge, this project.
Cool. That sounds like a path forward. Yeah, I mean, I certainly appreciate the thought and it's fun to watch someone work in real time, and just sort of like, again, approach it in a different way than my mind works. So I appreciate you doing that. I'm going to reach out, as I said, I'm going to reach out to Ken and try to work on those storylines a little bit. Stacy and Johnny, if you have further thoughts on more concrete things that we should be doing to pull together these lessons, your feedback would be great. And yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to make some progress on this, but we can only control what we can control.
Maybe one thing we can shoot for is, for a final presentation, we just have a clickable prototype.
Yeah.
Something like this is our landing page, and maybe it's chapter 1. We can click through, and then we'll see a screen that looks like this, and then I can just click on this field, and then the code comes in, and then I click again on the run button, and then the next thing comes in, and we have a few steps in here, and at the end it's like, congratulations, you did it, and then it takes you to the next part of the story. Maybe we can create one for this type of story that's linear, and maybe one that's, I don't know, where you build a function or so. And if we can just flesh that out, the visuals, the story a little bit, the lesson to a good point where it feels like it's a real thing, and we just have a clickable prototype, that I think that would be totally.
Do you have any further thoughts on that idea of like connecting with others? I think it's a really hard design challenge, and I'm not sure I've ever even seen anybody pull it off in education. I guess gaming is a lot more. It happens a lot more in gaming, and so I guess I'd be interested in your thoughts on that.
I mean, all I can think of is Duolingo, because that's what I use. My son uses, my mom actually uses, and it's always like, oh, so-and-so just finished the whatever challenge, or this other person did 100 days in a row or so.
Yeah.
But I guess the first thing you have to figure out is, how do you actually find someone who right now, at this very moment, maybe not this very moment, but around this time in life, in history, just wants to do this, and then how do you connect to them?
And just off that thought of what Christoph said, is approaching it from a gamer's mindset. Like I've had friends who are gamers. I've seen them on their PlayStation, on the Xbox, that kind of thing. Hey, we're jamming live now. Yeah, sorry, can't talk. I'm playing with my friend online.
Right.
Practically, from a practical perspective, like I don't have a PlayStation or an Xbox. It might just be interesting to take a screenshot from a PlayStation or an Xbox and see how these gamers are. What does that screen look like, really? I mean, I have no idea, to be honest.
I think you're immersed in the game. I mean, I'm not a gamer either, but you're immersed in the game, and you have a headset on, and you have audio connection.
Yeah.
There's also going to be sort of like Jitsi, as in like you're looking at the main screen, and there's a screen of people like on the right, like the boxes on the right kind of thing.
Yeah.
Maybe, as we're sort of talking about this, I'm trying to think of like because you don't want to be paired with randos unless you're like really up for randos.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's like this like public key, private key kind of relationship you can have with people, is in like you have a public key that you share, and that's like your persona online, and it's sort of like passed around. That's your identity, but you have this private key, which is used for signing into the platform. And that's supposed to be secret. And you just sort of like start getting a little bit of exposure to the idea of what's what. And if like you were to share, for example, your private key, like we would make sure that we would, flash warnings at you and be like, no, this is for you. Like you're going to, whatever, you sweep all your money away or all your points. I don't know, but like there's maybe something in there of, this is what we share and this is what we keep private, and what you share is a way to connect with others. And there's that happens in Lightning, of course, too, where people are advertising like opening channels and whatnot. Anyway, I don't know, just throwing things out.
Yeah, I mean, that would be amazing if it ties into the story. And the mining thing is pretty good if you form a pool with some friends and you run those scripts together somehow. it's difficult to get people on this to do this at the exact same time. Then you need like Firebase
Oh, I
or
think you
something for
simulate
real
it.
time.
I mean, I think you can do it. Like you maybe you're simulating you're doing this with 8, but you only sort of like expose the one other person that's like doing this. But I think you stub it out as if there are many people and you're sort of like joining this movement of resistance. But in reality, it's, depending on your time zone or whoever else is going through it, then you may be on your own. But we only surface that as appropriate.
Yeah, that would be super cool. It's a tough one.
I was just Googling like PlayStation collaborative game screens just to kind of get an idea. There's one here where you kind of show a split screen, so you actually see what the other what your peers are doing. I'm just going to see if I can share that. So it gives you a bit of a competitive feeling, like, oh, I can see what that other person's doing, so I want to, game alongside them. You can even have it split into 4 players.
Right.
So it creates that sort of like, you see where you are and you see where the other person is, but I don't know, practically speaking, how that's going to exist in the interface.
Well, if you have the REPL IDs, it shouldn't be impossible to do. Like if you're doing this, also the REPLit in particular, you can collaborate. You can go pair program quite easily. So that's what I really like about REPLit is they have these sessions, and you can share that session. Someone can hop in and you can code together.
Yeah.
It may not particularly work for like this kind of thing, although I think that'd be super cool. But the idea of like, yeah, just the connection with others, and I don't know, there's like, we're gonna have to start doing like community curation of like who's the right person to connect to, and protecting people. But the idea of like the REPL as a medium for collaboration seems interesting.
Yeah, I do wonder if you as a developer maybe know a little bit better of what's actually works there. In Figma we have real-time collaboration. I can send you this Figma link and your cursor shows up and you kind of float around.
Sure.
And people kind of
Google
got used
Docs
to
works
that.
pretty well too.
That works pretty well too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just curious what.
But REPLit has figured out that sort of synchronous code collaboration, which is one of the really nice features about them.
Probably requires some tinkering.
I wonder if I can share my screen really quickly. This is just an idea. I'm working with a split screen, so I'll just make this one a little bit bigger here. This is a game called Spatial Chat. It's a community, and then you can kind of see everyone who's online. It's got the social aspect here of, video calling, chatting. You can see who's where on the map, I guess. If you have the different challenges and they move through the challenges, then you can see where they are on the challenge map. And then maybe something with progression as well. Just, I don't know, it's just an image I found online.
Maybe another thing is where you have different characters with different strengths, and sometimes you need to find somebody with a different specialization to help you solve something particular. And it doesn't have to be simultaneous. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But that way. Yep. But on the other hand, you want to be able to people to do this individually, to learn on their own too. You don't want them to be stuck.
Sure.
But that's a really cool idea for Christoph, because it brings even another dimension of collaboration. So you could even have 2 levels of collaboration. One collaboration would be really competitive. So it's a competitive collaboration where people are moving alongside each other on the same challenge. And then you can have a collaborative collaboration where it's you help me because you have skill A, and I help you because you have skill B. So it's 2 types of collaboration. One is competitive and one is really collaborative, like 2 wizards working together. One is better with making potions and the other one's better at writing the potions, writing the recipes for the potions.
Let's extend this Designathon by a year and we'll get everything done.
The you just have such good ideas. You have such good ideas. So it's like it just.
One thing I wanted to add, and again, I'm not particularly married to any of these concepts, is that there used to be a pretty strong community in like 2013, 2014 called Bitcoin Wizards, which, maybe Saving Satoshi isn't the right kind of path here. Maybe it is like Bitcoin Wizards, which has a historical reference to it. So
Are there any traces of that?
It's still an IRC channel, but all those are logged, and that's where a lot of it was sort of it's moved around a bit to like where's the highest signal community in Bitcoin development. It's moved from Bitcoin Talk Forum, and then it moved to this like IRC channel, and then it moved to the mailing list, and now it's sort of diffused in a lot of different places. That's like one of the things about the Bitcoin development right now, is that there's not like a high signal place where people are just like bringing them their best selves. But Bitcoin Wizards for maybe 2 years was that place. And it was an IRC channel where people were talking about like these crazy ideas, and a lot of Greg Maxwell's sort of like when he was the most prolific like inventor in the space, those were conversations that came out of that IRC channel.
Okay. In the interest of time, we have 10 minutes until the hour, I think. We have this recorded, so all our amazing ideas are recorded. We can share them with the rest of the world if we'd like. But in terms of practical things, because today's Tuesday, this thing's going to due over on Sunday. We have code things to figure out. We have wild ideas. We have some UI design lessons to kind of figure out. There are a bunch of different things. How do you want to go about tackling some of those? What would you like to do? And Mo and I, as Mo organizers, really should stay out of it. I'm just kidding. How would you like to move forward?
Designathon with no other designers, but yes. So I have now sent a note to Ken, and I'm going to see if I can try to define some of that narrative a little bit more. I think a clickable prototype, like if that's what we get out of this week, then that's what we get out of this week. I don't want to put more pressure on you and your time. And so I think the narrative, my biggest priority is working on that narrative and coming up with the actual storyline. And then hopefully that will, inspire some more visually focused folks to work through that. I would like to see, I would want to make sure that Replit doesn't work before we use something else, because I do think it offers like a lot of features. But making sure that it does work is going to take some work.
And by writing the storyline, did you also want to detail out the lessons anymore? Or are you pretty good?
So those lessons need to be further fleshed out, and the progression needs to be a little bit clearer. And I mean, again, there's it's hard. I mean, as you know, it's hard to be creative on demand. So I'm doing my best, but that's the work that needs to be done.
I'll see if I can take a look at some of those lessons as well. My week is kind of busy, but if we're keeping scope only to like maybe 2 lessons, I think it's doable.
Yeah, I had 3 sort of concepts, but none of whatever you all can give is what you can give. So the main one was like decoding the Genesis block and sort of like understanding op return, and that introduces you to some fields which you can then use on the mining side, especially if you're like fiddling nonces and figuring out like what other fields that you should play with in order to try to find these blocks to defend against this, totalitarian nation. And then the one that I haven't really got to, but I think is the juiciest, is the, battling Dr. Craig Wrong, who I really want to be in the story because it's real and it's fun, and there's lots of like idiotic things that that character can do, which mimic real life.
That's him right there
Yeah,
with a very weird hand.
that's Dr. Craig wrong.
It's an AI generated image, but clearly the hand is just a bit out of control. There. I was trying to create some more images here, but it kind of looks too friendly.
Cool.
It has
I've
4
made
legs.
some meeting summary notes here, and then I'll just it's in the Google document. I'll also just
Okay.
post it in the channel, so
Okay.
everybody kind of knows. The next steps is to work on the narrative and the storyline.
Yep.
And then yeah, just move forward from there. I mean, Christoph's already come up with some amazing designs. You guys are pretty much sprinting forward already, so it'll be fine, I think.
This is really fun. I mean, like I said, I wanted to learn some of this AI image art creation stuff. And so
Yep.
I just type in some text and I let it run in the background and don't worry about it for 15 minutes. And then I have a lot of times, very crappy
Maybe
images.
where can I learn more about that?
So I'm gonna make one suggestion as well, because
Okay.
I think Christoph is going to send you the links probably, but also
Yeah.
jump into the AR channel.
Yeah.
Get chatting with those guys, because
Okay.
they're creating AR art constantly, and
Yeah.
they're using all the different tools.
Okay. Cool. I will look into that channel then.
And I'm sure Christoph will suggest all the tools now, because he probably knows them just like the back of his hand.
Yeah, but I'm not gonna. I really just use this is a desktop app. You download it, you press enter some text here at the top, you press generate, and that's it.
Oh, this is particularly easy, I guess.
This is super easy. And then the cheat code really is, I'll send you another link here, lexica.art. That is a search engine. You find an image you like, you click it, it shows you the text that was used to generate it. You
Okay.
copy paste it and you tweak it a little bit, and that's it. And then you get sometimes good images.
Super cool.
But it's very
Great.
straightforward. It takes a little bit to fiddle around, but it's pretty.
I shared the link as well for the Designathon. Oh no, I shared the wrong link. Sorry. I need to send the link for the AI art channel. I've sent the link for the game channel. Sorry, I'm going to send the link again.
But regardless, I appreciate everybody taking their time. I was particularly worried we would not have enough to talk about for an hour, but now we have the other problem. So thank you, everybody. This is at least fun for me. So I hope it's fun for you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Thanks all for joining. This was.
Yep. Cool.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, should I upload this?
Should you upload this video
to YouTube or not?
What does everyone think?
Yeah, I'm good.
I don't think I did anything too embarrassing.
Yeah, I don't care.
I mean, if we think it's useful for other people in the team group and whatnot then we can share
My
it.
guess is no one will watch it, but if you've gotten to the end of this video, congratulations.
Exactly. Okay, I'm gonna stop the recording here.